We are 3 more episodes into your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and so far, still very good. This really feels like it could be a top-tier Spider-Man show up with the animated series and Spectacular Spider-Man. And it continues its streak of doing things no Spider-Man show has ever done before, and very few adaptations of Spider-Man have ever done before, which makes it immediately interesting. I'm going to talk about episodes 3, 4, and 5 that came out this week. They are called Secret Identity Crisis, Hitting the Big Time, and The Unicorn Unleashed. First, let's talk about overall story arcs. These 3 episodes really focused on the relationship between Norman and Spider-Man. This was actually the mentor-mentee episodes. These were 2 characters. In one hand, we had a good guy being, brought up by a future bad guy, at least assuming Norman Osborn goes the way Norman Osborn usually does. And then on the other side, you have Lonnie Lincoln's relationship with this new gang that he joined. And it's funny how the Green Goblin is playing as basically a good guy right now. He works about the same way that Iron Man did in Civil War. And that's to say, he does not appear to have an ulterior motive. What he tells Spider-Man, I feel like, is the truth, which is, you saved my son. I'm really grateful. I vowed I was going to find Spider-Man so I could help him out because what he's doing is important. He put together this internship program, found Spider-Man, and now he's going to help Spider-Man. There was a point where what I thought was going on here, and I was hoping this wasn't it, was that the bad guys were all being given their weapons by Norman Osborn. Like he was the secret villain that was backing all of them so that they could go out and then he could help Spider-Man fight them and either gain a reputation or gain confidence or something like that. That's a storyline. I guess it's like Incredibles 2. A lot of comic book media has done this. But instead, it seems like he's kind of using Spider-Man to figure out what's going on with these other villains, which we will get to. But at the same time, he does seem genuinely interested in the mission of Spider-Man, and I love that. I like, too, that we're getting the Norman and Harry relationship now. Harry Osborn in this seems like a very, well-adjusted, kind of normal kid in the, situation that he is, which is super rich and famous on Instagram and all that stuff. But he's friendly, he's not stuck up or anything like that. And Norman Osborn, because he's not Spider-Man, I guess, and because he's not the self-made man that Peter Parker is, just does not respect him. That is a classic relationship. I like how that is playing out here. But I think it's interesting seeing Norman try to help Spider-Man, doing seemingly the best he can, and still kind of messing it up. But not, I would say, bringing Spider-Man down the wrong path. I don't think there's been a moment where Norman Osborn has done a villain thing. Peter has not had one of the villains that he's fighting, and then Norman Osborn's like, all right, now kill him, Peter, or snap their necks. And Peter's like, I don't want to do that. That's not what heroes do. We have this big fight about the morality of letting them live, blah, blah, blah. That's an angle that you could take this, but it doesn't seem like Norman's going to do that, and I like that. I like the direction they're going. I like how he's trying to help Spider-Man by upgrading his equipment in a way that is good, right? Giving the web shooters and stuff, very helpful, and giving him all of these new costumes that just keep getting him into more and more trouble. I think that's super fun. Apparently these are all from the comics. The only one I recognized was the Squire costume. That's one I feel like we've seen before, the yellow one. Apparently the other 2 are also based on different costumes that Spider-Man has worn in different times. The idea, at least with the Squire, was he can't be Spider-Man, but if you just put on a costume and go out and fight crime, people don't know you're the same guy. They're like, oh, a new guy. As long as you don't get caught, you're good. So from time to time, this is something that Spider-Man has taken advantage of. And I like that this new Spider-Man suit that's kind of the Future Foundation suit, it's almost right? He gets big picture stuff, but he doesn't have the character. He doesn't have the personality that's what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. And I love the detail that Spider-Man is into red and blue specifically because he's inspired by Captain America, which makes sense because spiders are, traditionally red and blue. It's not it's back when it's red and black, makes sense, right? That was why that costume originally looked like that. But red and blue, it's I guess you could kind of say there's probably a spider that looks like that, but not one that you've seen. We were talking about this on a stream I was doing on Twitch, twitch.tv/NandoViewMovies, where I was streaming Marvel Rivals. I think this is where this conversation was happening, where someone was saying, you would never know. If you were Spider-Man, it's real lucky that he saw the spider, because besides being able to climb on walls, nothing about him screams spider, and even climbing on walls is all kinds of bugs do that. There's nothing that is that unique about Spider-Man. When you start making the webbing and stuff, then it's oh yeah, this is Spider-Man for sure. But that is something that Spider-Man needs to develop. He doesn't, unless you're in the Tobey Maguire movies, naturally generate that. So I feel if you didn't know you got bit by the spider and you just showed up with those powers, you'd be oh, I'm wall man. I could crawl on the walls like a lot of insects, like many insects. And he's proportional strength of a spider, but also, I don't know, proportional strength of an ant. they are also very proportionally strong. But anyway, the Nico and Peter relationship is good. You always need a character like that to be the one that's like, oh, you're, dipping out on your friend responsibilities, you're letting the Spider-Man thing take over your life, and you need to create a balance. That's always the big arc with a Spider-Man story, and I think it's good that we're doing that here. I cannot decide what we're doing with Nico in terms of, like, is she into Spider-Man or is she not? Now, I said last week, or at least one of the times when I've talked about this, Nico is traditionally lesbian. That's not the case, apparently. She is bisexual, which I don't want to seem like I'm like trying to erase it. It's just like I don't know who's what. Like, I don't know. Maybe sexual preferences are in their Wikipedia pages now, but like she is bisexual, so she could be into Peter too. It seems like they could go either way. Just the way I read that last interaction in episode 5 before they go into the movie. It's like he is a friend and he is someone, like they're both outsiders, so their relationship is very special to her. But on the other side, it's like maybe there's also a romantic thing there, because this feels a lot like the MJ Liz Allen thing from Spider-Man Homecoming, where it's like we have this, popular girl who's not necessarily out of Peter's league, but like Peter likes her because he kind of, she's pretty and he like thinks he likes her, but in reality, there's this one person that's right there the whole time. That's like a pretty traditional arc. We'll talk about the villains later, but let's talk about Lonnie, the other character arc here. So this guy, and I've been saying this, like knew this was coming, it's just tragedy on tragedy on tragedy in terms of like his life is just falling apart and it sucks. Watching him get sucked into this gang because of his brother, because of his circumstance. I'm interested in what's going on with Lonnie. It's somewhat predictable, especially if you know what's going to happen to him. I've heard some people say that they're upset about Lonnie's skin tone because traditionally Tombstone, the character in the comics, has white skin as a result of albinism. And it's kind of part of his identity, right? Like he is, even before he gets the superpowers, like before he gets dipped in acid or whatever and becomes indestructible, he's just a scary guy. Besides the fact that Tombstone means death, he has a skin tone that makes him look ghostly and like it can associate with like horror and stuff like that. Either way, I understand people making that connection, and I do think you could have just had him be that. Like if you had the same character but he had albinism, I imagine then people would be like, why doesn't the voice actor have this? So I think there's other steps they probably would have needed to take, but I don't understand why they didn't do it. Because like, I don't know, might as well. And I think that could even play into like more of, Lonnie is a guy who maybe from a distance, besides being a character who in a Spider-Man story would be a bully, right, the jock, and wouldn't be smart, he also maybe is even a little like unusual looking in a way that like scares Peter, but then like he's a cool friendly guy and everybody likes him. Then as he gets involved with the gang, this albinism gets turned into kind of a supervillain origin story, or at least gets twisted that way by the gang leader, and it's another more tragedy for Lonnie. I think it's interesting, but like I think that story is good. I do think it's interesting that he is the personal connection villain in the Spider-Man story. Like eventually he's gonna have to fight Spider-Man, that's gonna be interesting. But at the same time, Green Goblin is also the personal connection Spider-Man villain in this story. Like, with Lonnie, it's just like, I appreciate it. I think it's done well. But at the same time, it's like Spider-Man's fighting a guy with laser beams. I'd kind of like to maybe see that instead. Because, like, that's more fun and kind of unusual. But this is a long game, so we'll see how this plays out over the 10 episodes. Maybe in the end, I'll be like, that was the best part of the show. We'll see. Let's talk about villains. We got some weird villains in this week. Like, even weirder than I expected. So third episode, you got 2. Again, these are guys who just are given superpowered equipment. So Tarantula and Speed Demon. I don't know too much about Tarantula, but Speed Demon I'm pretty familiar with. He shows up in the Spectacular Foes of Spider-Man. I even think in the episode they used the word overdrive to describe like what his superpowers are, and that's a different character who has a different superpower, also a Spider-Man villain, also in Spectacular Foes of Spider-Man. A really fun comic. So I would say, like, if you've never read any of these, but that's a very short, entertaining book that'll introduce you to some Spider-Man villains. You don't see that often. But I enjoyed seeing Speed Demon. This show is kind of reminding me of my adventures with Superman, specifically because in that first season, a lot of the villains just had a technology thing. I do think one of the things that this show is doing maybe better than that, for me at least, is giving them more distinct looks. It's lots of color. They have like an outfit on, usually like Speed Demon, for instance, has an outfit that has this traditional yellow and red and black And then he's got this green power signature that happens when he runs. So that makes him feel like Speed Demon a lot more than I feel like my Adventures of Superman season 1 villains felt these kind of sanitized versions of Superman villains. I don't want to like fully compare the two shows, but I do think because they both do the same thing, and I feel like I'm enjoying that more on the Spider-Man side. I'm guessing that's why. I don't know. We'll see. Episode 4, we got so many villains. First of all, we got Matt Gargan Scorpion. That's cool. I imagine this is supposed to be the Michael Mando Scorpion. I'm pretty sure that's not Michael Mando in this episode, but it looks similar enough. You know, I enjoy it. I think that's cool. I like that apparently his Scorpion thing is he has a Scorpion tattoo, and everybody in his gang is Scorpion themed, and also sometimes he pulls out a little knife. And I imagine eventually he's going to get full Scorpion powers, and that'll be fun. I also think just like something, it feels like it's very quaint about this, like, we have 10 guys in our gang, and we're going to fight your 10-guy gang. And at the same time, Spider-Man is fighting a guy with laser beams, and it's like, I don't know. I don't think that needs to escalate like the gang side, but it just kind of feels smaller than I think it maybe needs to. I don't know. It's fine. That whole thing's fine. Also, one of the gang members is called Bulldozer. This is a character that's part of the Wrecking Crew usually. Apparently, this is the character played by Big E from like the WWE. People would recognize him from The New Day, I think it's the name of the group that he used to be a part of. I knew he was in this somewhere, but apparently that's who that is. So cool. Then in the end of that episode, we get the introduction of Dr. Octopus, which is insane because he's just like Dr. Octopus by now. He doesn't have the tentacles, although I'm sure he has them somewhere, but he's just like wearing a Dr. Octopus outfit already, and I love that. And he has like a little business where he sells you some weird super weapon that you can use to make yourself a super villain if you want to, and they have his branding on it. He's got like the salesman attitude. I love that. Apparently his assistant is named Vincent, and this character is kind of maybe Leapfrog if they want to do that, who was in the She-Hulk show actually. So they, you know, we've already done a little bit of Leapfrog stuff, but maybe he'll have spring shoes at some point. That'd be fun. But then we got the real deep cut of these episodes is the villain Unicorn. So Unicorn is traditionally an Iron Man villain. Besides that, though, they more or less got it. Unicorn is a, I believe, Soviet villain who fights Iron Man. Makes a lot of Iron Man's villains back in the day were some sort of, you know, Soviet spy. You know, like you have Crimson Dynamo, you have Titanium Man, and you've got this guy, usually a man, so gender bent here, which is very woke. And they gave this version of the Unicorn a helmet that both shoots laser beams, which sure, that's always how he works. And then like is also analyzes fighting styles, which I think is cool. That is not usually a Unicorn thing. The person who is usually the Unicorn in the comics is traditionally a pretty good hand-to-hand combatant, but it's not the same kind of thing where like the little computer is telling him what to do. I do think this fight scene was great. Loved seeing the Unicorn beam like cut through stuff. I didn't like the bits where Spider-Man went in for a punch and then Unicorn ducked out of the way in slow motion. I thought that fight was cool. And then you also have a character that's kind of Rhino, who was the member of her team who she kind of sacrifices to fight Spider-Man, but then he turns on her and then now he's a friend. I imagine he will be Rhino by the end of this series, which is fun. And I think he's the guy who's like, oh, are you a Rhino? And she's like, no, I'm more like a unicorn. Which is fair, because what you do is not really Rhino-y stuff. But I did just think he was going to put that helmet on and just use it to try to gore Spider-Man like the Rhino traditionally does. But I like that. I don't know. I'm happy that kids are getting introduced to the Unicorn and Speed Demon and stuff like that. Oh, and Tombstone technically gets name-checked here because he saved his boss's life. So that's cool, I guess. Again, like usually I feel like that is because he's dangerous, but also the skin tone. So taking that away from it, it's just like, Tombstone's an okay name, but I don't know, man. Also, like if I'm the gang leader, I think this guy is going to be a professional athlete, right? And that's what he's saying. He's like, I'm on the track to go pro. Potentially, I'm going to go to college. I'm betting what they're going to make him do is like throw some games, even if he's still on the team. And it's like, dude, that's pretty short-sighted. This guy could be like a really big football player and you could throw big games. And I get it, it's a gang. They're not playing the long game. but like, you've got a investment here. You should make it so easy for him to go do football stuff so that when he is eventually famous and making lots of money, then you can call in a favor and be like, that's huge. Just a little advice for the boss guy whose name I forgot. Overall, still a very strong show. I'm really enjoying it. And you know what else I really enjoy? It's this video's sponsor, Nebula. If you've never heard of it before, Nebula is a subscription streaming service that me and a bunch of other YouTubers, a lot of people you're probably already watching, created because we wanted to have more control over our videos, we didn't want to have to cater to the algorithm, and we wanted to offer a better experience to you guys so you can watch all of my videos. They're all early. Some of them are like a full month early, some of them are like a day early, but every video goes up first on Nebula, and that is Nando V Movies, and that is the Nando Cut, both of my channels, and they're completely ad-free. So there's no ads in the middle, and there's no sponsor read at the end. And in 2025, we have so much cool stuff that we are working on. One thing that I am very excited about is a show called Abolish Everything. This is a live show that happens in the city where people come in and bring something that they hate, and they give a short presentation on why it should be abolished. Then a panel of experts goes in and questions them. And I'm excited for Abolish Everything because, like Nebula, we have a reputation for being very smart. We have a lot of very, very educated people who do research and make documentaries, but we also have a lot of really funny people, and I am excited to see that side of Nebula growing. And I always say, a year of Nebula is a steal at $5 a month or $60 a year. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for $3 a month. It is an incredible deal. Go check it out. You're going to love it. So thank you all for watching. We'll do this next week with episodes 6, 7, and 8. And until then, stay safe, and I'll see you around.